She was cast out for giving birth under a cursed moon, but what her children became would shake the very roots of prophecy. In this tale of survival, spirit, and ancient power, discover how a mother's love faced the desert, silence, and fear, only to awaken something the world thought was long forgotten. This is Triplets of the Moon Woman, a Souls of the Old West original. They came for her the night her body broke open under the blood moon. Ayani lay curled in the dirt behind her grandmother's collapsed shelter, breath short and limbs burning as her last cry faded into the wind. No midwife came. No blessing was whispered. Only the hiss of sand against canvas and the distant murmur of prayer as the elders turned their backs. When the first baby crowned, Ayani bit down on her shawl to muffle the sound. When the second came, she choked on her own blood. And when the third emerged, silent, small, and marked by a dark crescent beneath the left eye, she knew the Eat-Site stories would begin. The women of her village spoke of omens, of spirits born in threes who would bring either ruin or rebirth. And Ayani, a girl of 17 without a husband or protector, had just given them all the fear they needed. The sun rose over crimson sands, and the whispering began. Healer came, not to offer aid, but to confirm what the people already believed. The children had signs on them. One bore a hand-shaped birthmark near the heart, another a silver fleck in the iris, and the third, the quiet one, carried the crescent moon. "They are not of us," the healer said, stepping back as if her very breath might be cursed. Within hours, Ayani and her newborns were surrounded by robed elders and blank-faced neighbors. Her aunt, who once braided her hair with sunflower oil, could not meet her eyes. The village chief, a man who had never spoken to her directly before, declared it plainly. For the sake of balance, the children must leave tonight. No trial, no mercy, no voice raised in her defense. Ayani begged, pleaded, bled on the sand for someone to help her. No one did. By dusk, she had packed what little she had, 2 flasks of water, a faded sling, and the shawl her mother was buried in. With 1 baby tied to her back and 2 in her arms, she walked past the fire circle where the tribe shared meals. No one looked up. Even the dogs turned away. The desert swallowed her. The sky turned black. Coyotes cried from far ridges. Her steps grew uneven within. The first mile, but she did not stop. Her lips cracked. Her mind drifted. She did not cry, not because she wasn't afraid, but because there was no time for tears, only for breath, and then more breath, and then more. She whispered names into the night, one for each child: Toma, the firstborn; Luma, the girl with the silver eye; and Kio, the quiet one with the mark. Their names were not curses, they were promises. On the 3rd night she collapsed. Her knees gave out beside a dry riverbed littered with cracked bone and wind-worn stone. The children whimpered but did not scream. Ayani barely managed to loosen the wrap that held Kio to her chest before the stars blurred, and her vision went white. She dreamed of fire, of dancers in red cloth, of mothers screaming across mountains, of wolves laying down beside her like guardians. When she woke, a man stood above her. Not a tribesman, not a priest. A tall, broad-shouldered figure with hair like ash and eyes like melted sky. He wore no badge, no mask, no sign of belonging. He simply knelt, placed a hand gently over Kio's back, and said nothing. Ayani tried to speak. Her throat rasped. He offered her water. She drank, then passed out. Again. When she next opened her eyes, she was warm. Her children lay in a makeshift nest of wool and hide beside her. A fire crackled. The stranger sat by it, sharpening a blade in rhythmic silence. Ayani tried to rise, but her body warned her against it. He looked up, nodding once, as if to say, "You're safe," though no words left his mouth. For 2 days he spoke nothing, but he fed her broth. He held the babies when her arms could not. He left water by her side and mended the straps of her sling. On the 3rd morning, he drew in the sand. A symbol, a circle pierced by 3 arrows. Ayani recognized it from her grandmother's stories. The mark of the Watcher, a spirit who protected things not meant to exist, things too sacred or too dangerous for the world to accept. She sat beside him that evening, staring into the fire. They think my children are monsters, she said. Her voice was hoarse but steady. They say the desert will take us, that it would be better if I buried them myself. The man looked at her, still silent, still listening. She turned to the flames, her face lit by orange glow and pain. But I won't. She looked at her children, all three still breathing, still whole. They were born under a cursed moon, maybe, but I know their souls. They didn't bring evil into the world. They were born to change it. The man finally spoke, just one sentence. Then stay close to the fire. And Ayani, for the first time in nights of darkness and silence, let herself believe she might. Ayani didn't know the man's name. He moved through the sand like someone born of it, careful, patient, alert to sounds she couldn't hear. His shelter wasn't a cabin or a tent, but a hollowed rock chamber dug into a cliffside, hidden behind wild sagebrush and the remnants of stone carvings so ancient. They barely held shape. She didn't ask how he found the place. She didn't ask why he had chosen to bring her there. She only watched him. His days were deliberate. At dawn, he sat facing east, not praying, not meditating, just watching the wind, the way it moved through the dunes, the direction it blew. He read it like others read stars. Ayani had once believed in signs too, but signs had exiled her. Signs had nearly killed her children. Still, she found herself watching him as he studied the sky, hoping to understand what he saw in it. The babies began to recover in ways that felt miraculous. Luma, the silver-eyed girl, had a laugh that came in gasps, as if surprised by her own joy. Toma kicked with strength too much for his small size, and Kyo, the quiet one, stared into the fire for hours, unmoving, alert, his fingers always resting on the edge of Ayani's palm. He never cried. Not once. Ayani wondered sometimes if he had inherited something broken, if the moon that branded his skin had taken something in exchange. One night she woke to find the man sitting near Kyo, not touching him, just studying him. The baby was awake, wide-eyed, mirroring the man's stillness. They stared at each other like two beings that recognized something the rest of the world didn't. Ayani didn't interrupt. She simply lay back down, unsettled, but oddly comforted. By the fifth day, Ayani spoke his name aloud for the first time, or what she chose to call him. Yuan, she said, while he boiled roots near the fire. It means silent ground in my grandmother's tongue. He looked up, neither accepting nor rejecting the name, just nodding. From then on, she addressed him that way, and he never corrected her. Yuan never asked questions, never pressed her to explain what happened before he found her. But he listened when she spoke. She told him about the birth, about the exile, about the crescent moon under Kyo's eye, and the way the tribe's healer refused to touch them. They said they were marked, Ayani said. Marked to bring disaster. Yuan only added another log to the fire and traced 3 small dots in the dirt. So were the rivers once, he said, but the rivers changed the land. The cave became home. Ayani slept curled beside her children, and Yuan kept watch at the entrance like a stone guardian. He left only at dawn and returned by dusk, always carrying something: herbs, cloth scraps, wild berries. One day he returned with 3 carved figures, small animals made of bone, each different. He handed them to Ayani without a word. She studied them: a fox, an owl, and a bear cub. What are they for? She asked. Yuan pointed to each child. They're shadows, he said simply. Ayani blinked, unsure what he meant. Spirits? Guides, he clarified. They don't belong to us. They choose. That night, Ayani placed the carvings above the sleeping babies, and though she told herself it was nonsense, part of her felt something shift. The air seemed quieter. The fire burned a little slower. But peace never lingers long in cursed stories. One morning, Yuan returned later than usual. His face, normally composed, was strained. He carried no food, no herbs, just silence, heavier than before. Riders, he finally said. Ayani froze. From the village? He shook his head. Not yours. Outsiders, 3 men, 2 mules, following the riverbed. She gathered the children instinctively. They're looking for something? Not food, he replied. That night, they didn't light a fire. The cave became still. The babies sensed the shift. Even Luma didn't giggle. Ayani held them close, her body curled around them like a shield. Outside, wind brushed the cliffside with a mournful hiss. Yuan stood at the mouth of the cave with a small blade in his hand and eyes that did not blink. Ayani didn't sleep. As dawn crept into the sky, she whispered to Yuan, "You think they're here for the children?" He didn't answer immediately. Then finally, "I think they're afraid of what the children might become." His voice was low but certain. She looked down at her babies, so small, so innocent, so unaware of the weight already hung around their names. "Then we can't stay here," she said. Yuan nodded. "We move tomorrow, but not toward town." "Where then?" Ayani asked. "Toward the hills," he said. "Toward the one who remembers the old names." Ayani didn't know who he meant, but as the wind changed direction and carried the scent of smoke, she knew one thing for sure. The world had found them again, and this time it wouldn't let go so easily. The hills rose like sleeping giants, ancient and scarred. Ayani had never gone this far from her homeland. The trail was rough, winding through brush, sharp rock, and bones bleached by sun and silence. Yuan led them with a quiet certainty, carrying Toma in one arm and a small satchel across his back. Ayani bore Luma and Kyo close to her chest, wrapped tightly in layers of cloth and resolve. They traveled at dawn and dusk, hiding by day in caves or under thorned trees. There were signs that others had passed through recently, ashes still warm, footprints half buried in wind-blown dust. Yuan said little, but his watchfulness grew sharper. His hand stayed near his belt knife and his eyes scanned the horizon constantly. Ayani tried not to ask questions she wasn't ready to hear the answers to, but at night, when the wind howled low like a warning, she whispered prayers in her mother's tongue for the safety of her children. On the 5th evening, they found the circle. Stone slabs arranged with sacred intention stood in the clearing, worn by time but unmistakably placed. Yuan stopped at its edge and closed his eyes. "This is where the old stories sleep," he murmured. Ayani stepped forward, her boots cracking dry leaves, the children silent in her arms. She had heard tales of these circles, gathering places for the keepers of memory, elders who had withdrawn from both tribe and town. She'd thought they were just myths, but the carvings were real. Spirals, eyes, the symbol of the wind snake. Yuan approached one stone, knelt and placed his palm against it. Then he spoke, not to Ayani, but to the rock itself. "We come for the one who walks between breaths." The moment he said it, the air shifted. The fire pit in the center of the circle flared to life, though no hand had lit it. A voice rose from the other side of the flames. Old, cracked like dry bark, but still sharp. "You should not have brought them here." Ayani turned, heart hammering, and saw a figure emerging from behind one of the stones, cloaked in coyote fur, bones braided into their hair, and eyes white. With blindness, the elder moved with unsettling precision. "You bring the Moonborn into the sacred place, knowing what they carry." Ayani stepped forward instinctively, shielding the children. "They're just babies." The elder tilted their head, unmoved. And so was the last one, before he split a eye. River with a single cry. Yuan raised his voice gently. "She was exiled. She didn't choose this, neither did they." The elder scoffed. "The sky chooses. The blood chooses. Your intentions mean nothing." Then, approaching slowly, they reached out a hand and touched Kyo's forehead. The moment their skin met his, the flames turned blue. The elder staggered back, hissing through their teeth. 3 marks. 3 spirits. 1 soul. Ayani caught Kyo tighter. "What does that mean?" "It means they are not 3, the elder rasped. "They are one being split in body, a rebirth, a return, and the world is not ready." Ayani's voice cracked. "Return of what?" "The listener, the memory, the storm. Long ago, when the fire gods walked, they feared the soul who could speak to all things. Wind, stone, beast, man. So they broke it apart, buried it across lifetimes, but this one," the elder gestured at the children now all awake, eyes wide, breath in rhythm. "Is that soul reborn? And now the hunters will come. Yuan placed a hand on Ayani's shoulder. "We need guidance." The elder laughed dryly. "No, you need to run." But Ayani didn't move. If they were broken and now reborn, why are people afraid of them? The elder circled the fire. Because unity terrifies. Because prophecy disrupts power. Because when the wind speaks through a child, kings begin to tremble. Then the elder leaned close, breath sour with ash. "You were meant to be their vessel, Ayani, but you must become their voice." Ayani swallowed. "I don't understand how." "You don't have to," the elder said. "You just have to stop running from who they are, from who you are." The fire began to dim. The elder stepped back into the shadows of the stone. "Take them north, to the ridge of the 7 birds. There the next. Truth waits, but be warned, truth always demands something in return." And just like that, the figure was gone. That night, Ayani held her children beneath a sky full of shifting stars. Yuan kept the fire low, and for the first time since they'd fled the cliffs, Ayani didn't feel hunted. She felt summoned, as if every step they'd taken had led to this purpose, not just survival but revelation. Kyo rested his tiny palm against her chest, right over her heart, and in the silence, Ayani thought she heard something in the smoke. Not a word, not a sound, but a feeling, as if the fire itself recognized them, as if the desert had been waiting for their return. The journey north led them through valleys where even birds refused to nest. The elder's instructions were clear. Follow the stars shaped like 7 birds, then climb where no water runs. But Ayani had never learned to read constellations. Yuan did. He led without hesitation, eyes always tilted. Skyward at dusk. They moved quietly now, instinctively, as if every step might awaken something dangerous. The air grew drier, the nights colder, and the silence between them louder. Ayani noticed the change in her children, too. Toma had begun waking at night in fits, eyes wide as if haunted by dreams he couldn't yet speak. Luma would stare into the distance and hum low, unrecognizable tones that neither soothed nor unsettled, just echoed. But it was Kyo who frightened her most. He no longer reacted to loud sounds. His gaze had turned inward, deeper. Ayani feared she was losing parts of him to something ancient. On the 7th night they saw the glow, orange flickers against the distant hills. Yuan spotted it first, his jaw tightening. Fire, but not campfire. Ayani followed his gaze, smoke pillars twisted in the dark like serpents. "How far?" she asked. "Close enough for worry. Too far for answers." They hid in the ruins of a stone well that night. Yuan buried their tracks. Ayani hushed her children with soft lullabies that broke halfway through, not because they cried, but because her throat did. The next morning they found proof. Boot prints deep and deliberate. 3 sets. One heavy, one limping, one thin but sharp. Yuan crouched beside them, running fingers through the impressions. "Mercenaries," he said, voice grim. "Not locals. Hired men. This one carries metal. Heavy on the right side." Ayani's stomach sank. "They're looking for us." "No," Yuan corrected. "They're looking for the children." That afternoon they changed direction, abandoned the elder's path, took to the high cliffs where no horse could follow. It slowed them, weakened them, but Yuan insisted. Better hunger than capture. Ayani agreed, though every jagged step tore at her spirit. She thought often about her village, not with longing, but with a cruel kind of clarity. The same people who once kissed her cheek and braided flowers in her hair had watched her crawl into the sand with 3 infants, and not one hand had reached out. But now strangers burned fields to find them. The children she'd been told to abandon were being hunted like relics. There was a power here, too big to understand. She feared it. And yet, some part of her had begun to believe that maybe the power wasn't something to fear, but something to claim. They camped one evening in a shallow cave beneath overhanging rock. The wind howled hard. Luma clung to her, eyes wide. "Mama, there's a voice in the fire." Ayani stiffened. The flames were low, barely flickering. "What voice?" she whispered. "It says, they're coming." Before Ayani could respond, Yuan grabbed his blade and vanished into the dusk. Minutes passed like hours. Then gunfire, distant but clear. Ayani covered the babies, heart pounding. She didn't run. She waited, trusted. When Ewan returned, blood marked his shoulder. One down, two scattered, but they're not far. Ayani helped him dress the wound. He didn't flinch. They asked, "For the marked one," he said through clenched teeth. Said they'd burn every hill until they found the boy with the moon beneath his eye. Keo stirred in his sleep, as if the words touched something inside him. They moved at night now. Ayani learned to wrap the children so tightly they barely made a sound. She rationed water until her tongue cracked. She walked barefoot when her boots gave out. And through it all, she watched Keo, the quiet boy who never cried, whose gaze now held something unearthly. One morning, Ayani found him standing on his own, arms stretched toward the sunrise, murmuring syllables she did not understand. Luma and Toma stood beside him in silence. When she approached, Keo turned slowly, placed his hand on her chest and whispered, "They're not ready for us." She didn't know who they were, but she believed him. That night, as fire flickered again on the southern horizon, Ayani realized something terrifying and beautiful. The world hadn't just come hunting her children. It had come fearing them. And still, she refused to give them up. She wrapped their small hands in her own and whispered promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "You are not curses," she told them. "You are not monsters. You are mine." Ewan, battered and silent, sharpened his blade by the fire, eyes hollow from days without rest. He didn't speak often anymore, but when he did, it was always truth. That night, as they prepared to move again, he looked at Ayani and said, "This won't end with running." She nodded. "Then we make it end with standing." The fire hissed, and for the first time in days, Ayani did not feel like prey. She felt like something older, something rooted, something rising. It happened during the storm, violent, sudden, and cruel. Wind tore across the ridge with such force that even the mountains groaned. Ayani had just wrapped Keo in the sling against her chest and was turning to shelter Luma and Toma when a gust threw sand in her eyes. For a split second she blinked, reached blindly, and missed. When her vision cleared, Toma was gone. No scream, no cry, just gone. She dropped to her knees, heart lurching against her ribs, frantically digging through the sand, calling his name over and over. Ewan sprinted across the ridge, scanning every ledge, every shadow, every dip in the rock. "There's no trail," he muttered. "The storm erased everything." Ayani clawed at the ground with bare hands until her fingers bled. "He was just here," she whispered. "He was right here." Hours passed like years. Night fell. The fire wouldn't stay lit. Keo and Luma whimpered in her arms while her soul splintered in silence. "He's not dead," she muttered to herself over and over, as if willing the words to become fact. Ewan didn't argue. He sat near her, eyes scanning the darkness. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the land takes one, but not to keep, to guide." Ayani couldn't hear him. Her mind refused stillness. She saw Toma's face in every flicker of light, in every gust of wind, in the way Keo held her thumb too tightly. At dawn, Ewan pointed to the sky. "Look." An eagle circled overhead, large, dark, deliberate. Not hunting, watching. Then it cried once and glided. North. Ayani stood, weak-kneed and trembling. "He's leading us," she whispered, and with that she followed. They crossed barren ridges for 3 days, always chasing the eagle. It never left them, never strayed. Each time they rested, it perched in view, on high rocks, on crooked trees, on the ruins of stone shrines older than memory. Luma began humming again, the same strange melody, but this time it sounded like direction, like language, like a trail. Keo remained silent, but his eyes, oh, his eyes, followed the eagle with something more than wonder. Ayani began to sense a rhythm beneath the land, a pulse as though something ancient was recognizing their steps. On the third night, the eagle disappeared behind a cliffside as the sky darkened. Ayani climbed the ridge with blistered hands and torn feet, and there, curled beneath a twisted cedar, was Toma, sleeping unharmed, wrapped in the shawl she'd lost 3 days ago. Ayani collapsed beside him, sobbing not with fear but with release. She pulled him into her arms, and he stirred, blinking up at her. "You came," he whispered. "I waited." She kissed his face, checked every limb, every breath. He was whole. Yuan arrived moments later, breath shallow, eyes wide. "There's no way he climbed here alone," he said. Ayani didn't answer. She just looked up at the sky, where the eagle now hovered again, silent and still. That night, as the children slept nestled together, Ayani sat beside the fire, staring into it without blinking. "Why us?" she asked. Yuan didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "Because you didn't leave them." Ayani turned. "What do you mean?" "Everyone else did. Their village, the world, even the gods maybe, but not you." Before dawn, Ayani awoke to find Kyo sitting upright, hands pressed to the earth. Luma and Toma flanked him, mirroring the gesture. Their eyes were open, fixed on nothing, yet aware of everything. The air buzzed with stillness. The fire burned blue. Ayani felt it before she saw it. The carvings in the cave walls around them began to glow faintly. Spirals, lines, old tribal marks. She'd never learned to read. Yuan stood frozen. "They're speaking," he said, but not in words. Kyo opened his mouth, and a sound emerged. Soft, melodic, ancient. Not a song, not a chant. Something older. Ayani's skin prickled. The children weren't just born under prophecy. They were enacting it. "This place remembers them," Yuan said. "Or, they're helping it remember itself." As the morning broke, Ayani watched her 3 children, no longer just infants, no longer just burdens to be protected. They were becoming something else, something chosen, something feared. And she was no longer running. She was walking with them. At the edge of the cave, the eagle perched on a branch, watching, waiting. Ayani walked to it, looked into its eyes, and whispered, "Where to now?" The eagle blinked, then took off, westward, toward the circle of the 7 birds, toward truth, toward whatever must come next. Ayani turned to Yuan. "We follow." He nodded, and without another word, they walked into the wind, into the unknown, no longer prey, but promise. The ridge of the 7 birds was not marked by stones or signs. It was marked by silence. A vast clearing lay between 7 towering trees, each twisted in the shape of wings mid-flight, their bark scarred with age and lightning. Ayani stood at its edge with Yuan and her children, the wind brushing. Their faces like breath from another realm. "This is the place," Yuan said quietly, "where the old truths wait." Ayani looked down at her children. Toma's fists were clenched. Luma's fingers traced invisible patterns in the dirt. And Kyo's eyes were closed, but his lips moved, whispering to no one, or maybe to everyone. The eagle landed on a dead branch above them, gave one sharp cry, and was gone. Then the sky darkened, not with storm, but with stillness. Out of the shadows came the ones who had followed. Not mercenaries this time, but believers, cloaked figures with symbols painted across their faces and blades tucked beneath robes. They moved with purpose and fear. "Step away from the moon, child," one called out. "The prophecy ends tonight." Ayani placed herself between her children and the strangers. "They are not curses," she said, voice strong. "They are light." One stepped forward, pointing at Kyo. "That one carries the storm inside. He will break what must remain unbroken." Yuan moved to draw his knife, but Ayani raised her hand. "No, no more running, no more blood." She turned to Kyo. "If you are what they say you are, then speak." Kyo opened his eyes. They were no longer a child's eyes. They were the color of the sky before a flood. He stepped forward alone. No fear, no hesitation. The robed ones raised their weapons, but froze. Their limbs locked in place as if air itself had thickened. Kyo reached toward the earth, touched it with his palm. The sigh. Wind changed. The grass bent. The trees groaned and began to hum. A low, guttural sound that seemed to rise from the bones of the land. Luma and Toma joined him, placing their hands beside his. Together the 3 children began to sing, not with words, but with vibration, as if calling memory back. Into soil. The markings on the trees began to glow, The symbols on the enemies' faces cracked and flaked away. One dropped his blade and fell to his knees, sobbing. Another screamed and fled. The rest simply stood, trembling, as if looking into a future too large to bear. When the song ended, Ayani could feel it in her chest, like an old wound closing. The ground no longer ached beneath her. The sky no longer pressed down. The children turned back toward her, faces calm, eyes ordinary again. "It's done," Kyo said. "Just that. It's done." The remaining figures dropped their weapons and backed away, silent, unworthy. One whispered, "We thought they'd bring ruin." Ayani answered, "No, they brought truth." Yuan sheathed his blade. His face was lined with awe. "You named them," he said. "You gave them their first breath, but they gave this world its next one." Ayani didn't reply. She just knelt and kissed each of her children's foreheads, feeling the heat of something ancient now at rest. That night, under a sky more clear than she'd ever seen, Ayani lit a fire in the center of the seven-winged trees. She sat with her children around it, holding them not as burdens, but as anchors. "You are the ones who listen," she said softly. "You are the ones who remember." She looked at the stars, hundreds of them blinking back, and began to speak their names aloud. Not the names the tribe had given them, not the names of pain or fear, but new names, names made of wind and fire, river and... "You'll be names of choice. You are not what they feared," she whispered. "You are what they forgot to hope for." At dawn, the four of them walked down from the ridge. Yuan walked beside them, not as protector, not as leader, but as witness. No one followed. No one dared. The trail ahead was open, rough, unwritten, but no longer cursed. As the first light broke across the desert, Kyo looked up and smiled. "Mama," he said. "The stars are listening." Ayani smiled back. "Then let's give them something to remember." If this story touched your heart like it did ours, don't forget to subscribe to Souls of the Old West. Leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and send this video to someone who loves powerful tales of courage, spirit, and destiny. Your support helps us keep bringing these unforgettable stories to life.